Hi, everybody. Okay, if everybody could please keep their video turned off, that would be great. And thank you so much for coming. My name is Stacy, and I'm a bookseller and the events coordinator at Belmont Books. Belmont Books, for those of you who are not familiar with us, is an independent bookstore in Belmont, Massachusetts. Before we begin, I'd like to let you know that we have a number of other virtual events coming up, including Helena Hunting and Jenny Holiday on August 13th, as well as Zerlina Maxwell discussing her recent book, The End of White Politics, with Here and Now producer Karen Miller-Medson on August 18th. You can register for these and our other events on our website, belmontbooks.com, which is where you can also purchase Congressman Swalwell's book, Endgame, Inside the Impeachment of Donald J. Trump. Excuse me. A reminder that your audio and video should remain turned off for the duration of the event. Any questions can be sent to the host via chat, and I will relay as many as possible to the Congresspeople after the presentation. This event will be recorded, and we are honored to welcome Congressman Eric Swalwell and Congresswoman Katherine. I just want to tell you a little bit about them, and then I will turn the event over to them. Congressman Eric Swalwell is serving his 4th term representing California's 15th Congressional District in the East Bay near San Francisco. He serves on the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence, on the House Committee on the Judiciary, and is co-chair of the House Democratic Steering and Policy Committee. He also is founder and chairman emeritus of Future Forum, a group of young, House Democrats focused upon outreach to millennials. He earned his undergraduate and law degrees from the University of Maryland and served as a county prosecutor and a city councilman before winning his House seat in 2012 by defeating a 40-year incumbent. Congresswoman Katherine serves the 5th District of Massachusetts. She was first elected in a special election in 2013. She's a vocal advocate for ending wage discrimination, protecting women's health care, access to affordable, high-quality childcare, paid family leave, safer schools, and other reforms to address the challenges women and families face. In Congress, she brings her experience as a state senator, state representative, general counsel for the Massachusetts Office of Child Care Services, and policy chief for the state attorney general. And without further ado, I will turn this over to the Congresspeople.
All right, thank you so much, Stacy, for hosting us. And Eric, we welcome you virtually to the 5th District of Massachusetts that includes Belmont. And we are very, very excited to have you and talk about this book and impeachment, and lots going on even today. And we know that you have been busy responding to the news that your Senator, Kamala Harris, is going to be the vice presidential candidate, which is just, it's thrilling. It's a great day, a big milestone in the history of our country, and sort of a really interesting backdrop for a discussion around impeachment in your book and your unique perspective on it. So, there are so many questions that I have for you about this book and writing it. And tell me about, I mean, there have been so many times that serving in Congress at this momentous point in our history, where we really sometimes feel like we're fighting for the very soul of our democracy. What sort of led you to say, I better write this down? And I hope that you keep a journal, because if you had all that detail from memory, I'm going to be really feeling inadequate. So sort of what led you to decide, I need to put this into a book?
Well, thank you, Katherine, for hosting me and virtually inviting me to your district. And thank you, Stacy at Belmont, and everyone who has joined us. And Katherine, you're right, it has felt since that day that Donald Trump was inaugurated that we have been doing all we can to just protect our democracy from a wrecking ball that is constantly hitting it and destroying the rule of law and the foundations that our country has always relied upon. But because we won the midterms in 2018, we were no longer helpless. And as we went into the investigation on the Judiciary Committee and the Intelligence Committee, it just occurred to me that it was a privilege to have that vantage point and to see so many courageous individuals come forward, whether it was in our caucus who called for impeachment, our speaker and Adam Schiff, who made many of the decisions, or the individuals in the administration who broke ranks and raised their right hand to swear testimony and speak truth to power, that I wanted to chronicle their stories and really write a tribute to their courage. And so the way I did it, Katherine, every night when I put my Katherine, my little
I
down,
know.
you've met her, when I would put her to bed, I had downloaded a dictation app on my phone. And so instead of reading her a story or singing her a song, I would recount for her what happened in a deposition or what had happened at a hearing. And some would say that that's probably child cruelty. Yes, probably. So I had to do it in a sing-song voice so that she wouldn't get flustered and frustrated and fussy as I was doing it. So, if you listen to the audio, it really could be adapted as a children's book. Separately, Katherine, I had always wanted to write a book about my dad, who was a police chief in Iowa. I was born in Iowa, and he stood up to corruption in a small town. And I found a number of Des Moines Register articles about him on a crusade to stop a corrupt mayor and council members who thought they were above the law. And ultimately, my dad lost his job from that mayor and council, and we moved our family out west. But he was vindicated by the local press for what he had tried to do. And that was always a lesson that stuck with me, that you have to be willing to lose your job to do what's right. And the parallel was, of course, that I was, a part of this impeachment where I saw Lieutenant Colonel Vindman and Fiona Hill and Masha Yovanovitch all willing to lose their job, and did lose their job, to do what was right. And I thought it was an interesting parallel to share.
Yeah, and I hope that there is a second book about your dad, because I think it would be an inspiring story for so many. And that was, just part of this incredible moment in this impeachment. It's such a momentous decision as a member of Congress and as a country. It's something that I know nobody wanted to do. None of us wanted this to end up in impeachment. But you had not only sort of this very pivotal role in being in that room, in serving on the Intelligence Committee, but you also serve on the Judiciary Committee. And what was that like? And were there differences that you saw and perspectives that were different from those two committees?
Oh, there were absolutely differences. And, of course, Judiciary had started, early in the new Congress around the Mueller Report. And so the Intelligence Committee in the first 2 years of the Trump administration had been involved in the Russia investigation, at least what we could investigate, considering Devin Nunes was leading the investigation and really did not allow any subpoenas to go out to any witnesses. But I think because of Adam Schiff's leadership, we were able to at least share with the country, the concerns that were in existence. And actually, I think we in part were the impetus for the Mueller investigation coming about. So we were able to do that for 2 years. Again, just hold on tight, keep it all together, and hopefully win the majority. And then once we achieved the majority, the Intelligence Committee for the first part of 2019, really was not involved in much of the public accountability of the president. It was happening on the Judiciary Committee in our efforts to get the Mueller report. And as you recall, we were being defied by every witness we would subpoena, including Don McGahn, the president's counsel. And just
still going on today.
Yes, that's exactly right. So it was only because the whistleblower had come from the intelligence community did the ball jurisdictionally fall back in the Intelligence Committee court. And I thought that this was a kind of a perfect arrangement where we had the expertise from the Russia investigation, We were a smaller team, so we could be lean and mean and do the preliminary impeachment inquiry. And then you had the Judiciary Committee, which was already poised and ready because of the Mueller work to take the handoff. And I saw nothing but teamwork between Adam Schiff and Jerry Nadler the whole way through. And I think that's why it was a successful impeachment. Not to say that what happened in the Senate is something that was successful, but we did the best we could with what little evidence was turned over from the White House on our end.
Yeah, it's really, it really was amazing to watch, all of you. And just the questioning you did, how much you were able to bring to light with zero cooperation. And really,
and Katherine, you were a prosecutor, and something that stuck out to me that our lead investigator on the Intelligence Committee had said, Dan Goldman. I don't know if you remember Dan, who had led a lot of the questions. He was a SDN, he was a Southern District of New York prosecutor. And, in that district, most of your cases are what we call paper cases. I mean, you're indicting against massive, corporations or massive, white collar fraud. And Dan said something that always stuck with me. He said, this is probably the biggest case ever in the United States with the fewest amounts of document. That we truly had almost zero documents. It was just witness testimony.
It was insane. And, and yet with those witnesses, you were able to elicit such powerful testimony. And like you said, it was really, and this book, I think, really does capture what you were trying to capture, kind of the bravery around those witnesses. But one thing I thought was interesting that you noted in the book was that some of the women witnesses were treated very differently. And I think, what can you elaborate on that for me? I think it was really, you write about how differently Hope Hicks was treated during her questioning. And tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, that was, Hope Hicks's testimony was quite interesting. One, it was the only witness where every Republican showed up during the Russia investigation. They really would not show up for most of them would not show up for most witnesses. When Hope Hicks showed up, the room was full, and she did something that you could see why the president liked her. She was always regarded as, being his memory, and she had the deepest memory of any witness we interviewed. But when she came into she could recall the most minor of details, and she was one of the few that actually would not lie to us. If we touched a point that she didn't want to talk about, she would just refuse to answer. Whereas others would lie, or like Roger Stone and Michael Cohen, who were convicted for lying to us. But Hope did a lap around the conference table. We had this long conference table in the Intelligence Committee room. And when she came in, she went and shook every person's hand and said, "Hi, I'm Hope. Hi, I'm Hope." And just did a full lap of about, 25 members on the committee. And I thought, wow, this is kind of the Donald Trump move, which is to kind of be the show person and ingratiate yourself.
And disarming, yeah.
Yeah. It was an interesting tactic. But on the impeachment investigation, I did see that witnesses like Masha Yovanovitch and Fiona Hill were subjected to a lot of mansplaining from our colleagues across the aisle. I mean, it was painful to watch, but they didn't need me or anyone else to defend them. I think the country saw when in their public hearings that they were, unflappable, made of steel, and there's only one version of the truth, and they knew it, and they were telling it.
Yeah, that just, you were all able to bring that out, and they were just such patriots and just gonna tell the truth. And it gets complicated, right? That's what my grandmother used to tell me, that lies are very complicated, so keep your life simple and just tell the truth. And you could see, like they just didn't get wrapped around the spokes because they were so clear. This is what happened, and I'm going to tell you. And like you said, really without regard for what it would mean to their careers or their families. They just spoke the truth, and that's
the reason I wanted to have the parallel with my dad was because my father, even today, is not comfortable with me publicly talking about him losing his job. And it's the most Iowa of stories. It was a county fair. It kind of reached a head at a county fair when a bunch of the mayor's friends had parked in the fire lane and refused to move. And my dad ultimately said, well, if you're not going to move, you're going to be ticketed and towed. And at the next city council meeting, the mayor said, reverse all of those tickets or you're going to be fired. And my dad said, I'm not going to do that. We all have to follow the same rules. And so he lost his job. And even to this day, he still is embarrassed and feels humiliation around the fact that he lost his job and would not again work in law enforcement. And I always thought that while the public looked at Vindman and Yovanovitch as people who were doing something courageous, that they too probably had this internal struggle where they would wonder if they did the right thing, because you look at Vindman, he lost the promotion track that he was on. And at the same time, the person who chose not to testify, John Bolton, is making millions of dollars on his book. And you have to be asking yourself, did I do the right thing? Because I know my dad asks himself that every day. And I wanted to write a book that said, you did the right thing and you will and are redeemed for it.
Yeah, and I think that you have accomplished that, and I'm sure your dad looks at you and your career and your values and knows he did the right thing, because he certainly has inspired his son to choose to do what's right, even when it's hard. And it is sort of amazing that it does take courage, but it's just such a time to watch truth-telling be something that is considered somehow weak or just, that this president has set a national tone of get whatever you can. And that's how you should approach every issue. And this impeachment trial obviously was one that revealed how far the president was willing to go to sell out our White House, our country, our elections. But it also showed that there are so many people in Congress with you and your colleagues on the Intelligence Committee and Judiciary Committee and in public life who still believe in those values. And I think that the book that you've written is kind of what we need to hear. We need to hear more of these stories, that public service is still just that. It's about service, and it's about, higher truths and working for people you may never meet, but that you see their struggles. And I really think that it's such a crucial message for where we are.
So many of our colleagues who, especially freshmen, they were sworn into a shutdown. And within, a few months, an impeachment inquiry is launched. And I always thought it was interesting that, people would say, oh, you're only doing this impeachment to satisfy your base. It doesn't poll well at all. And I thought, well, if that's true, then what does it say about the frontline, vulnerable colleagues of ours who are supporting impeachment? To me, it actually, if it doesn't poll well, it tells me that they actually are doing it because they think it's the right thing to do, and to hell with what the public opinion is, because they're following the Constitution. Would consistently stay over 50% support. But I was also inspired by so many of our colleagues, particularly ones with national security backgrounds, and in the book I called them the national security Dems, because when 7 of them wrote an op-ed in the Washington Post on the eve of us announcing the inquiry, that really was a momentous time, and I think moved the speaker to support impeachment.
Yeah, I that letter was incredible. And like you said, there was just pressure building and building. But when those, national security Dems really said, this is enough, that we have tough districts. This may not be popular, but I didn't come to Washington to do what's popular. I came to do what's right. And this couldn't have been more right. And one of the things I find interesting is that talk about taking the majority, I believe it was in 2018, you asked for an independent commission to look into Russia. What do you think could have been different if that had happened?
And you helped me and you supported that. And I was inspired right after 2016, after the election, we started to receive briefings from the FBI, the CIA, the NSA about what exactly Russia had done. And I was concerned that they had interfered in our election. A intelligence community assessment would come out and say that Putin had ordered interference. He had a preferred candidate in Donald Trump and sought to tear down Hillary Clinton, that they hacked and released emails, that they tried to get into voting systems. And I thought that it was so toxic of an issue because Republicans and the president would be so sensitive around the issue of Russia, believing that any investigation would suggest that he was an illegitimate president, that we should take it outside of Congress and put it into the hands of scholars and statespersons and experts. And honestly, I was motivated by what I saw after September 11 as an intern on the Hill at the time, that the September 11 Commission did just that. It was taken outside of Congress, made recommendations that still keep us safe in the skies today. And I thought this would be an easy call to take it out of Congress, but only a few Republicans and every Democrat had signed on board. And what would have happened, I believe that we would better be able to counter Russia today because there would be greater awareness among every American about what had happened, that it wouldn't be as polarizing of an issue. And as you know, we just saw in the last week that the Director of National Intelligence just updated their assessment of Russia, and they said, just like 2016, Vladimir Putin has a preferred candidate in Donald Trump and is seeking to denigrate Joe Biden. And I don't think we're in any better of a position to counter it because we have not, used unity as an antidote in our country.
Yeah, and one of the things that concerns me is what we're seeing even most recently. There is some, you probably know more about this than I do, but a New York Times reported viral video that has made the rounds in, conservative circles showing a Bible being burned, supposedly at a Portland protest. And this is Russian Kremlin-backed propaganda and misinformation. What are we going to do about this? And are you concerned about the rise? I mean, and how can we counteract this as we go into these last few crucial months before November?
No, I am concerned, and as you pointed out, I believe the president's son and Senator Ted Cruz had both amplified that, false story that the Russians were putting out there, and they're going to continue to do that. And they see nothing but green lights in our democracy. They don't see, a stop sign, stop light, or cop on the beat who would stop them from interfering. They see a president who continues to welcome it. And why would they stop? And why would other countries not see it as an opportunity themselves to want to get in on the game? And that's the environment that we've created. And so I think we can name and shame. And again, we're not helpless because we have the majority now. And frankly, only because Adam Schiff and Speaker Pelosi pushed over the last month for the Director of National Intelligence to update their assessment, does the public know that Russia, again, has a preference for Trump, tries to denigrate Biden. That information, that's not new intelligence. It's just newly shared with the American people because we had the majority and were able to, press for the public to know about that. But we are limited. And I think the best we can do is to just overwhelm the polls by turning out and making the result so obvious that it can't be denied. But my fear, Katherine, is that because the president is not countering misinformation, that if it is close at all after November 3, that the period between election day and inauguration day is a time when the Russians could exploit the divisiveness in our country and create discord and sow doubt about the result, that they are capable of doing that. And perhaps they would be wise to, not engage as much now, but to really save, and keep their powder dry for that period, because it could be quite, foggy and divisive.
I'm sort of regretting asking you that question. Now there's something even more to worry about.
But that's why I do believe, and I think you agree, that because and I put this in the book, that Donald Trump ultimately is a coward. And if he's checked hard enough, he backs down. And if the result is so overwhelming, I don't think he's going to be able to thrive in a situation like that. Only if it's close do I think he would recognize that he could have, this discord amplified by the Russians, and that he could intimate, to these armed militia persons who take their assault rifles to state capitals, to protect him. You could see all the things he would do and have Bill Barr go to court and file frivolous lawsuits for him. He can only do that if it's close. If it's not close, I do think that's where, the coward in him would just back down. And so we just can't let it be close.
Yeah, nope, we've got a lot of work to do. I am, speaking of the information that has sort of just come to the public, but as you said, is really the Speaker, Adam Schiff, pushing for this information to be released. You're on the Intel Committee, and much of your book is sort of putting us in the room with you. But a lot of the impeachment was also public. How do you deal with the information that you hear that I know can be frightening? You're the dad of, 2 little adorable children. You have a lovely wife and a family you care deeply about, and constituents and a country. How do you sort of, as an Intel Committee member, deal with the information that you have? And, do you ever walk onto the floor after just getting briefed and be like, you guys have no idea. You're living a blissful, unaware life right now?
Well, one, I think you should go on the committee because you would love the work, by the way.
I would love the work.
And you would be great. It's interesting because the committee meets 3 floors below the Capitol. And there are no cameras allowed inside. You can't take your cell phone in. The old saying is that you check your cell phone and your politics at the door. And you open a door that is about this thick. You go into a kind of an ante room, and then you open another door that's just as thick. And it feels like you are going into a different world. And you also can't take any notes out that you take inside, and you can't have a staffer inside with you. It's only the Intelligence Committee staff. There's no windows in there. So I think just the way the room is structured, it's very compartmentalized physically and figuratively. So you kind of keep the work in there. And that sounds weird. I mean, that's not to say when I come above ground, I don't think about it, but I kind of keep it in there. So when I go back into the room, it's kind of like, a light comes back on in me where I recall everything that was going on before. But when I leave the room, I know that I just have to leave it in there because I can't do anything outside the room with the information anyway, and there's no sense in stewing over, what you've learned. But it takes a couple of years. I'm in my 6th year on the committee, and I'm still learning a lot every day. But it is the most fulfilling part of this job, is being able to serve on that committee. And I know the Speaker, is an alum of the committee.
Oh, yes. She's also an appropriator.
Yes. Those are her 2 babies, appropriations and the Intelligence Committee. And you know that she cares a lot about that committee, and she wants the members on it to, put the work in. And that was impressed on every member when they were appointed. So,
you go into this room, you are supposed to check your phone and your politics. And reading your descriptions, having watched it, sometimes I'm just like, do when you're faced with some of these witnesses who were just so compelling and so authentic, and had so much to lose, it would have been so easy not to appear to, or to try and mislead or obfuscate. Yes, you sometimes wonder, the Republicans on the committee, do they really believe it? Is this sort of theater for the president? Do you ever hear something different in private than they would say in public?
Initially, yes. And in the first couple months after the November election and the briefings we received about what Russia had done, I would talk to my friends, and they were friends on the other side, and I would hear kind of the same theme, which was, we don't like what Russia did, we don't like how the president engages them, but as one woman on the committee said, when he tweets, he wins. And there was this fear that if you speak out against the president, he has a forceful Twitter persona, and that they would, engender attacks from that would bring attacks from their right. And one example was Mark Sanford. So he was not on the committee, but he was a friend of mine in the House, and someone who I had gotten very close to supporting the independent commission bill. And I remember talking to him and him telling me, look, I just spoke out recently against the president, just give me a little bit of space before I come on board. And then his primary comes out, and he had only stuck his neck out just a millimeter against the president. And if you remember, the president was tweeting at him over and over and supporting his primary opponent. Sanford loses in the primary. And the next week, the president goes to the Republican conference meeting and dances on Sanford's grave while he's there.
Yes.
And not to embarrass Sanford, but to send a message to any other member who would dare to do what he has done. And so people colloquially will say that they're putting party over country when they should be putting country over party. But it's worse than that. It's more parochial. It's that they were putting their own job over country, that they didn't want to lose their own job. And that is what was most frustrating to me. So fast forward to now. Do they privately say, the president concerns me now? They don't. In fact, the chairman would tell you that since the pandemic, we've tried to hold a number of hearings virtually, and the Republicans boycott them. They don't show up. And these are we don't just work on Russia. We work on a host of issues that are not partisan, and they just don't show up anymore, and out of protest. And so that's where they are right now, is they're full out enabling the president. And I hope that the day after Donald Trump, we can have a reset. It's a committee that has always passed a bipartisan Intelligence Authorization Act. We've made reforms to surveillance in a bipartisan way, but that is not there right now. And I miss that, honestly.
I mean, it just says so much about where we are, that you sit on the Intelligence Committee in the United States House of Representatives, and you don't come and hear. You guys, I don't think you have any light topics in front of your committee. There's never a really jovial day on Intel. And to not even come, it's just, I don't understand. I don't understand sort of the power of that. And as you said, it's sort of at its root, it's about protecting your own job. And all of us just serve, no matter how many decades we may serve, or, however short we're there, it's such a short period in history. And to squander that, and to squander the incredible privilege that people of your district gave you to represent them, and to not do it and not attend Intelligence Committee hearings. I don't know how you square that in your mind with your oath of office, and with why you ever ran, and the faith that people in your district put in you. I don't know how that works for them.
know, and I do believe, though, that the way we've conducted ourselves will be, acquitted in history. And as I listened to Schiff during the public impeachment inquiry, at the end of each day, if you recall, he would give a closing argument, essentially, a 10-minute summation of what we had heard. And on the second day, I looked over to see if he was working from like a prepared script or notes, and he wasn't. He was just that prepared and that knowledgeable, about the case, a complicated case. $400 million of our aid going to a place thousands of miles away for a conflict that wouldn't really touch our lives, but he knew it inside and out. And then when you watched him on the Senate floor making the case, I always got the sense that, yes, he was speaking to the present, he was speaking to senator jurors, but that he was also speaking to history, and that he recognizes that his words will be, retrieved by future leaders, as you said, decades from now, centuries from now, to look at how we handled this corrupt president. And, I compare that to what I see from my, colleagues, across the aisle, and it's such short-sightedness. I see kind of the long game view that the chairman played, and recognizing what was at stake for our country and how he, cast what was at stake. And then I see just the short term, let me protect my job, let me enable corruption. And I do think that how we chose to go about this will be acquitted.
Yeah. So I've asked you what members of the committee say in private. What were some of the, tell us what was a surreal moment for you in all of this, besides going on Tucker Carlson? What else was a surreal moment?
The two surreal moments underground in that secure compartmentalized information facility that they call a SCIF. One was the day after Bill Taylor had testified. So this was the baseball voice, of Bill Taylor, the ambassador to Ukraine, who really broke the case open for us. And if you recall, as his testimony had made its way to public airwaves, Donald Trump that day called Matt Gaetz and the likes to the White House and told them to fight harder. So as I was leaving that long deposition that day, I saw a House maintenance facility worker rolling into the SCIF a podium with the House seal on it. And the Capitol police officers who guard the SCIF were very skeptical about, why is a podium going in there? And I told the maintenance guy, I said, no, we don't allow any press conferences or anything. This is no cameras, nothing are allowed here. And I think the Capitol police guys didn't want to be confrontational. And the maintenance guy, he's looking at his ticket and he goes, well, Matt Gaetz said that I could bring this down here. And I said, oh no, I had a bad feeling. It was a bad omen about where this was going. So I told him, I said, it has to go outside into the area where the stairs are. So cut to the next morning, we get there early for another early morning deposition, and Gaetz outside organizes this press conference with dozens of Republicans. And the next thing we hear, as this woman from the Department of Defense sits down to begin her testimony, you see dozens of our Republican colleagues with their phones in hand and their iWatches on, walking into the SCIF. Most of them are already allowed in there anyway.
Right. They weren't storming someplace.
Yeah, they were chanting, "Let us in, let us in," and that was a surreal moment. What was most frustrating, though, was that they were screaming, that they were getting in the face of Schiff and pointing fingers at him and saying that he ran a star chamber. One funny moment, though, Catherine. When a colleague of ours, a Republican colleague from Alabama, is screaming at Schiff and pointing and saying, "You're running a star chamber," and Mike Quigley says, "Actually, that's in the other room." and so there were some light moments,
That's
even
so
when they
funny.
were all.
That's very
Mike
Quigley.
Very Mike Quigley. And so we made the decision to just let them sit there. And, Schiff, again, the sergeant of arms comes down and says to him, "Sir, I can get you another room. We can continue this till tomorrow. I can try and, kick them out." And Schiff he knew that they wanted to be kicked out. They wanted that video of them being forcefully removed. And Schiff said, "No, don't give them what they want." And also, essentially, these aren't John Lewis's who just came in and stormed the skiff. They don't have the resolve or the patience, to sit this out and make the point. And so he predicted the next vote series, they would all leave. And they did. And so called the witness back in, and that was that. I mean, but that was one of the more surreal moments, of the investigation.
Yeah, that was surreal to watch. I cannot imagine actually living it.
Quigley also did at one point, he represents Mars, the candy maker in his district. So he's always bringing Snickers down to pass out to all the members. And so as one of the members was yelling at Val Demings, Mike handed him a bag of Snickers and said, "Want a Snickers?" You remember like the hangry commercials?
That's right.
So Quigley was always good for just, lightening the room.
Oh, one of the things you mentioned in the book is sort of this, watching on Saturday Night Live, speaking of, lightening the kind of review. So, what'd you think? How do you think they captured you all?
We always predicted which members would have Saturday Night Live characters. That was like a fun parlor game inside the skiff. But yeah, that was, I think, Don Draper, Jonathan Hamm was he was in one of the depictions of our hearings, and none of us, deserved to have John Hamm play any of us. But no, there were many light moments, during the hearings, and that was what, frankly, got us through it. Finally, the most inspiring moment, though, was the public hearing when Masha Yovanovitch testified. It was the first public hearing, and as she was giving her opening statement, I was looking. My phone was just blowing up, and I sitting at the dais. I look at my phone, and I see that the president is tweeting at her. And again, intimidating her, further smearing and clearing of what he had done, before he fired her. And so I wrote a note and sent it down the dais to Schiff, of what he had said. And Schiff was in the uncomfortable position of being the first one to tell Yovanovitch, once he started asking questions. And you could just see her stomach drop when she, heard what the president was saying. But again, it didn't shake her. And after hours of testimony and being attacked and having her motives questioned by the Republicans, I remember her standing up with her dignity intact as the gavel, was struck, and the whole room in that Ways and Means committee room erupted in applause. And she just walked out, and it very much felt like everything she had done was validated. And that was a moment I'll never forget.
Yeah, that's a powerful moment, and just such a juxtaposition of really just courage and grace and patriotism, and just, just hiding behind your keyboard, sending tweets out that are so destructive without any regard for her, what happened, for the truth, for the American people's security. It was just a breathtaking moment. And I can't imagine being the one who had to pass my phone to Adam, who had to say, guess what just happened, while you're here trying to tell everyone the truth. And, it's just, it's amazing, that whole experience. And we all have families at home, and I see one of the questions in the chat for you is, you do have this beautiful young family, and what's it like for them to watch you go through this? And, besides the incredible hours that you put into it, there is sort of this weight to it all. And how did your family deal with that?
Yeah, and my wife works full time, and she certainly, sacrifices a lot so that, I can, work in this role, and she's incredibly supportive. But, I think you just learn because, as much as, I feel like we are, doing the right thing. We certainly, she is subjected to, and I'm subjected to, and, we see the mail that comes in, and, the posts that are made, and, the threats that, come across. And I think we're just convinced that this is the right thing to do right now. I'm happy that our kids will never remember this. I really am glad
You're going
that
to
they
have a
will
really
not.
good book to read.
Yeah, and the book starts, Catherine, with making pancakes for my son at 5 in the
Yeah.
morning the day Mueller testified.
As
And
a
what was so
working
fun?
mom, Eric, I have to say, I loved that. It's just like, here you are, you couldn't be dealing with more important, like just sort of these existential questions about who we're going to be as Americans. And it all comes down to like, what kind of pancakes can I get my young son to eat?
And he didn't want to eat any of them. And I thought, geez, this day's not going well. I can't even win a negotiation with my son. Like, how am I going to elicit, answers from the special counsel? Although my wife, if the book achieved anything, she read that chapter. And 2 weeks ago, when we had Bill Barr before the Judiciary Committee, she did say, you know what, I'm going to get up with the kids this morning so you can just get a little bit of rest and prepare for the Barr hearing. So she didn't have me get up again, at 5 in the morning with the kids in prep for the Bill Barr hearing. So, but I am glad that, as you said, that they will not remember it, but I think they'll have good lessons to learn from it. And my hope is that they won't remember this. They won't have a visual memory, of this president. That they'll
Yeah.
learn the lessons of what not to do. They'll know that I was able to serve with very honorable colleagues who did the right thing and were able to receive testimony from witnesses who risked it all. And I imagine that post Donald Trump, we're going to find out that there was so much more corruption going on where people just didn't feel comfortable going forward at the time. And, it'll every single day justify the proceedings that we went through.
Well, I think they're going to have the same amazing example of values in action that you had with your dad. And that is the part they're going to remember and take away from this. And I find that hopeful. But we do have a question from Eileen, and she's sort of asking something along the same lines. What signs of hope or encouragement that we are going to overcome this tumultuous time do you find?
Yeah, I hope you find the same ones. And to me, and I would always, in a closing argument to a jury, whenever I'd want to explain, a complicated, piece of evidence or a theme of a story, I would tell them to imagine that they have their nose up against a Monet painting. And when you're just 6 inches away from it, it looks like blobs of color and it doesn't really make much sense. But when you take a step back and you give yourself time and distance, it's a clear picture. It's a beautiful painting. And what I see right now is our nose is still really up close in the history that we're going through. But if we step back with some perspective, we will see that the day after Donald Trump was elected, millions of women went to the streets and marched all across the country. We had marches for climate, marches for science. And at the end of that year, that dark year, we elected Doug Jones, largely because of historic turnout from African-American women in Alabama. And we didn't stop. In 2018, the year started also in a dark fashion with the tragedy at Parkland, but the March for Our Lives generation was born. And they joined us in the marching, and we won 41 seats in the House to flip the Congress. And then 2019 kept marching, flipped the Virginia legislature, won the Kentucky governorship. And in 2020, we had so many candidates that inspired young people to turn out in the presidential primaries. In Oklahoma, just a couple of weeks ago, voters there turned out to vote in all places of Oklahoma to join the Affordable Care Act. So as you take steps back and have the perspective of time, you see that people are moving their feet, as our colleague, and I know one of your mentors, John Lewis, would say, to just keep marching, keep moving, and believe that if you go to the ballot box, that's where all the great change is made. So I am optimistic that we're going to get this right, and that change is coming in just 84 short days.
Yeah. Find that good trouble. Don't get weary.
That's right.
And, he told us, I know it was the last time that I heard his voice, and maybe it was for you too, when he called into the caucus call and said, the winds of change are blowing. And so it's time for us to, unfurl those sails and put them up. We have another question from Teddy, who wonders if you feel that we can return to a non-political time on the Intelligence Committee.
Yeah, I do believe so. I hope it becomes a boring committee again, boring at least in like what the public knows about
right.
What the committee.
I don't think it'll ever be boring.
Yeah, because traditionally you would never see an Intelligence Committee member on television. The
Right.
custom of the committee was that you just don't do that. And for the first 4 years I was on the committee, that was the first 2 years I was on the committee, that was the case. But Chairman Schiff felt strongly that unless we told the public what evidence was being buried to protect the president, that it would just be buried and we wouldn't be able to have better awareness. But I do believe that with President Biden and professionals that are in the intelligence agencies, and that we go back to not politicizing intelligence, that we will get back to where we were before. I also am optimistic that this is going to be, a reckoning of an election, and that you're going to see people pay a price for what they have done to enable the president. And I hope that the Republican Party looks at itself and asks, is this who we want to continue to be, or will we shed this from our party? And that's my hope. And I think you're just like me, because you have friendships across the aisle, that I will not be bitter if we win, and I won't want to do to them what I perceive they did to us. I want to unite the country and pick us out of this deep dark hole and move us forward, and not interested at all in rubbing it in any way.
No, we have way too much to do, and way too much damage to undo. And I hope that we can come out of this time and this pandemic and build something better. That we can have a more inclusive economy, and that's going to take everybody. And we've got to break this cycle of, it's discouraging, but I'm going to take your optimism and apply it. And we have a sort of fun question. When the movie is made about this time period, who would you want to play you? And it can be John Hamm, if you would like.
It'll probably be an extra, right?
I don't know.
It's funny, the actor Jerry O'Connell routinely will tweet at me and at SNL and say that if I was ever to be on there, he thinks that he looks like me. I think I would be like a poor man's Jerry O'Connell. I don't know if do you know Jerry O'Connell?
I don't know him. No, yeah. I'm gonna have to look him up.
He's in like a lot of crime dramas on television. He's in the show Billions as well. Yeah.
So who does he play in Billions?
He was one of the friends of I believe Axelrod.
Okay. All right.
Eileen says, I know Jerry O'Connell. There you go.
Well, we'll have to get Eileen's opinion if she thinks he'd be good to play you.
Well, thank you for doing this, Katherine. I really am optimistic. I know you are too. It's a gauntlet of misinformation, voter suppression, and welcoming foreign interference that we have to go through.
Yeah.
But I'm confident that we're willing to keep marching. As I said, it's all we've done since he was inaugurated.
Yeah, and I just really want to thank you, Eric, not only for the book and sort of chronicling, from your unique perspective on all that went on and making it so relatable and making us all feel like we were in the room with you, but also just for, keeping that optimism, following the evidence, the facts, the truth, but also in this time period, following science and data. And, that's how we are going to get through this. And for all your, political activism and helping with campaigns, you are one of those members that always remembers that we are a Congress and that we are there to represent our districts and bring those perspectives, but put it together with others who disagree with us and represent very different parts of the country and come out with a better product. And you really live by that. And that just, I think makes you an incredible asset. And we're very grateful to the people of the East Bay for sending you to us. So thank you. Thank you for coming virtually to Belmont. And thank you, Stacy, for having us.
Thank you, Stacy.
Oh, thank you both so much, both for being here and for all that you do. I think you both really epitomize public service, and we all really appreciate that.
Great. Well, thank you all. And Katherine, I'll see you, back on campus very soon.
Hopefully soon, because we actually get a negotiated deal, but we will see.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Take good care.